Hello, my witches and wizards, and welcome back to our little corner of magic. Tonight, we are not simply telling a story. We are stepping into a journey together. A journey to Hogwarts, the school of witchcraft and wizardry that has captured hearts all over the world. Before we begin, I have a small favor to ask. We are a very small channel, and every bit of support means the world to us. If you enjoy these magical journeys, please take a moment to subscribe, to like this video, and to share it with someone who could use a little bit of magic in their life. And please leave a comment telling us what country you're listening from and what story you'd love to hear next. Your support helps us keep creating these cozy adventures for you. So, take a deep breath, set aside your thoughts of the day, and allow yourself to drift into this magical night. The train to Hogwarts is waiting, and your journey begins now. It began on a night thick with mist. The castle walls shimmer as though they were made of silver. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts wandered like ghosts through the corridors of my mind. So I wrapped myself in my cloak and left the Gryffindor Tower, following the quiet hum of the night. The castle was asleep. Even the portraits had drifted off, their painted eyes closed. I walked carefully, past the suits of armor that sometimes snored, and out through the great oak doors into the cool air. The sky above was a deep indigo, and the moon hung low over the forest. From where I stood, the forbidden forest seemed to breathe, a faint movement in the distance, alive but calm. I'd been there before, of course, but something felt different tonight. There was a sound. Not a noise exactly, more like a whisper carried on the wind. It wasn't frightening. It was almost musical, like soft voices calling from far away. Curiosity stirred inside me. I took one cautious step toward the forest, then another, until the soft grass gave way to fallen leaves and roots beneath my feet. The forest was darker beneath the trees, but peaceful. My wand stayed in my hand, though I didn't feel the need for light yet. The moon above filtered through gaps in the branches, sketching silver shapes on the ground. As I walked, the whispering grew clearer. It came from deep within the forest, rising and falling like a song half remembered. I followed, careful to step quietly. The forest creatures seemed to sense my calm. They didn't hide or flee. A fox darted past, pausing only to look up at me before vanishing into the brush. The whispers led me to an old path I'd never noticed before. The stones beneath the moss looked ancient, etched with faint symbols that glowed softly when the moonlight touched them. The air around me shimmered as if the path itself was enchanted. I hesitated, then stepped onto it. The moment I did, the symbols brightened. The mist that had settled between the trees began to swirl, drifting ahead of me like a gentle guide. I followed the glowing path deeper into the forest. The sound of the whispering song wrapped around me. It wasn't just one voice, but many, blending together like wind through harp strings. Eventually, the trees opened into a small clearing. At its center stood a circle of ancient stones, half buried in ivy. They pulsed faintly with blue light. The whispering stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then, a soft rush of air brushed past my face. The light from the stones gathered in the middle of the circle, swirling into a faint image, a ghostly silver stag. My breath caught. It was my father's Patronus. The stag looked at me, its eyes kind and calm. I didn't hear words, but I understood the feeling. Follow, but without fear. The stag turned and began to move along the edge of the clearing. I followed slowly, keeping my distance. The air seemed to hum with quiet power. We walked until the stag stopped beside a fallen tree covered in moss. Beneath it, half buried, was a smooth wooden box. The stag dipped its head toward it, then vanished into faint wisps of silver light that floated away like snowflakes. I knelt and brushed away the moss. The box was sealed with a simple latch, no magic, no traps. Inside was something wrapped in faded parchment. I unfolded it carefully. It was an old wand, carved with runes, smooth from years of use, and faintly warm to the touch. On the parchment, in delicate ink, were words: "For those who walk with courage and kindness, the forest will answer." I didn't know whose wand it was, or how long it had been hidden, but I felt its calm energy, steady and old. I whispered, "Thank you," to the empty clearing, and somehow I felt the forest listening. When I stepped back onto the glowing path, it lit again, this time leading me outward. The mist guided me home, the whispering song now softer, like a lullaby fading into the trees. By the time I emerged from the forest, dawn was breaking over the hills. The first light touched the towers of Hogwarts, painting them gold. I slipped quietly back into the castle and climbed the stairs to my dormitory. The ancient wand rested beside my bed. It felt right there, almost humming with quiet contentment. As I drifted to sleep, I thought of the forest, its mysteries, its watchful calm, its quiet ways of teaching courage, and I knew that somewhere in its depths, ancient magic still waited, not to frighten, but to guide. And so, if you ever find yourself wandering through darkness, remember the whispering path. Follow its light, trust your steps, and let the forest carry you gently home. There are some nights when even the library at Hogwarts feels too small for all the questions in my head. That night was one of them. The stars were scattered above the castle, and the moon hung low over the forbidden forest, spilling light across the grounds like melted silver. The castle was quiet, everyone asleep, everyone except me. I had been reading about a kind of magic that existed long before wands or spells. The old enchantments, the ones that lived in the natural world. And somewhere, deep in the forbidden forest, there was said to be a place where trees kept memories, a hidden grove that whispered stories of the past. The idea was too beautiful to resist. So, with my wand tucked in my sleeve and a charm to silence my steps, I slipped out of the castle and into the cool night. The moment I crossed the edge of the forest, the air changed. The scent of pine and moss filled the air, and the sounds of the castle faded behind me. The trees stood tall and ancient, their branches tangled like thoughts I hadn't yet untangled. I whispered, "Lumos," and a soft light glowed from my wand tip. The forest shimmered around me, dark but not menacing. As I walked, a gentle breeze stirred the leaves above, and for a moment I thought I heard something. Not quite words, but not just wind either. A faint murmur, rhythmic and soft, almost like pages turning. I followed the sound. The deeper I went, the louder it grew. The quiet rustle of thousands of leaves moving together, whispering in time. Finally, the path opened into a glade I had never seen before. The moonlight fell through the trees in perfect circles, and in the center stood a massive oak tree, ancient and silver-barked, its roots woven like old ropes across the forest floor. When I stepped closer, I saw that its leaves were glowing faintly. Each one shimmered with faint light, and as they moved, they made that same whispering sound. It wasn't random, it was language. The Library of Leaves. I raised my wand slightly, and the glow from the oak deepened. Thousands of tiny runes appeared along its branches, each one flickering briefly before fading again. I realized the leaves weren't just glowing, they were remembering. Each leaf carried a moment of time, like a page in a living book. I reached out gently and brushed one of the leaves with my fingertips. A warm wave of light rippled through the air, and suddenly I saw it, a memory not my own. I saw Hagrid, much younger, carrying a baby dragon in his arms. I saw Dumbledore standing by the lake under a stormy sky. I saw students from centuries ago laughing under the same moon that shone tonight. Then the images faded, and I was standing there again, breathless and calm all at once. The forest had been keeping its own history all along. Every breath of wind, every footstep, every bit of magic ever cast beneath its branches, all written here in leaves and roots. The whispers rose again, soft and gentle. This time I listened carefully. It wasn't words exactly, more like feelings turned into sound. Gratitude, peace, welcome. I smiled, realizing the forest wasn't guarding its secrets. It was sharing them quietly with anyone who would take the time to listen. I sat beneath the great oak, setting my wand aside and closed my eyes. The light from the leaves flickered gently above me, and I could feel their hum in my chest, like a lullaby sung in a language older than any spell book. I stayed like that for a long while, listening, and in that silence, I realized that magic didn't always need to be loud or bright. Sometimes it was gentle, hidden in the way the world breathed when no one was watching. When I finally stood to leave, the leaves rustled softly, almost like a farewell. As I walked back through the forest, I noticed the path glowing faintly beneath my feet, a soft thread of light leading me safely home. By the time I reached the castle, dawn had begun to bloom at the edge of the sky. I slipped through the door, past the sleeping portraits, and into the common room. I placed my wand on the table, still warm from the forest's magic, and whispered to myself, "There are libraries everywhere, if only you know how to read them." And that night, when I finally drifted to sleep, I dreamt of trees whispering in ancient voices, their leaves turning softly in the moonlight, stories upon stories waiting to be heard. May your night be filled with such quiet wonder, and may your dreams find their way to the Library of Leaves. There are few places in the world that feel as safe as Hagrid's hut on a cool night. The smell of tea, the warmth from the fire, and the sound of Fang snoring somewhere in the corner, it all makes you forget there's a whole forest of mysteries just beyond the pumpkin patch. That evening, the castle lights had gone out early. A gentle rain had passed, leaving the air fresh and the grass sparkling under the moonlight. I had been studying in the common room, but my thoughts kept drifting to Hagrid and the faint glow I'd seen earlier from his hut by the forest's edge. So I put on my cloak and slipped out quietly. The night was still, the only sound the soft rhythm of my footsteps across damp grass. The sky was a deep blue, and the forbidden forest rose ahead like a sleeping giant, dark but calm. Hagrid's hut came into view, warm light spilling from the windows. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney. As I approached, I heard a deep voice humming, low and cheerful, half a tune, half a growl. I knocked. "Come in, Harry." Hagrid's voice boomed through the door before I could say a word. "Knew I'd be seeing ya sooner or later. Got something to show ya." Inside, the hut was glowing with firelight. A kettle whistled softly, and Hagrid stood by the table holding a lantern unlike any I'd ever seen. It wasn't made of glass, but of crystal that shimmered faintly on its own. The light inside wasn't flame. It was soft silver, like bottled moonlight. Hagrid grinned, eyes twinkling beneath his wild hair. "Forest light," he said. "Old kind of magic. Found it years ago, deep in the woods. Don't burn, don't fade, don't frighten the creatures none. Thought I'd take it out tonight. There's something I've been meaning to check on." I followed him outside, Fang padding along behind us. The lantern glowed steadily, lighting the path with soft silver hues that danced on the wet grass. We passed the pumpkin patch and stopped where the forest began. The trees loomed tall and quiet, branches heavy with mist. Hagrid raised the lantern higher. "See, Harry," he said softly, "the forest's alive even when it looks still. There's always something stirring. Not dangerous tonight, though. No, not tonight." We walked a short way into the forest. The silver light spilled over moss and bark, turning everything gentle and strange. I could hear the hum of nighttime life, distant hoots, soft rustles, the faint chirp of something small. The deeper we went, the brighter the lantern seemed to glow. Then, suddenly, Hagrid stopped. "There," he whispered. Ahead of us stood a tree unlike the others. Its bark shimmered faintly, and at its base were tiny glowing orbs, like dewdrops of light scattered across the roots. "They're moon moths," Hagrid said with a grin. "Rare, gentle things. Been coming to this tree for generations. Lay their eggs where moonlight touches the earth. Only happens once a year when the air's right." I knelt closer. The orbs pulsed softly, breathing light in and out like tiny heartbeats. The tree itself seemed alive, its leaves rustling faintly in rhythm. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Aye," Hagrid said. "Forest keeps its own secrets. Don't shout 'em loud, mind. You just have to listen." We stood there for a while, watching the moon moths glow and drift like floating stars. Fang lay down beside us, his head resting on his paws, tail flicking lazily. Hagrid told me stories, not the kind you'd find in any book, but ones the forest had told him. About unicorn foals born under full moons, about bough truckles that guarded branches like knights, about the day he first found the crystal lantern buried beneath the roots of an old willow. His voice was deep and steady, like the forest itself. The longer he spoke, the calmer the world felt, as if every creature in the woods was listening too. Eventually, the moon climbed high above the trees, silver and bright. Hagrid lowered the lantern, and the forest light dimmed to a soft glow. "Best be headin' back," he said quietly. "Forest sleeps deep come midnight. Best not wake it." We walked back in silence, our steps quiet against the moss. The air was cool, the world peaceful. When we reached the hut, Hagrid hung the lantern by his door. Its silver glow spilled gently into the night, a beacon of calm against the dark edge of the forest. "Thanks for comin', Harry," he said, smiling. "Sometimes a bit of quiet's worth more than all the spells in the world." I smiled back, feeling the warmth of the fire through the door. "Thanks for showing me, Hagrid." I walked back to the castle alone. The night felt different now, alive but kind, humming softly around me. The forest wasn't just a place of danger and mystery. It was home to stories old as time, watched over by a half-giant with a lantern full of moonlight. When I finally climbed into bed, I could still see the silver glow behind my eyelids, and I thought of Hagrid, keeper of keys, friend of creatures, and quiet guardian of the forbidden forest at night. May your dreams tonight be peaceful as that light. May your thoughts wander gently through the trees, and may you wake with the calm of Hagrid's lantern still glowing in your heart. If you've ever visited the burrow at night, you'll know what I mean when I say it doesn't sleep. Not really. Even when the lights are low and the fire has burned to embers, the house hums with quiet life. The walls creak like they're breathing. The clock on the mantel ticks softly, and sometimes you can hear the garden gnomes chattering just outside the window. It was summer, and I'd been staying with the Weasleys for a few days. Hermione was there too, camped out in Ginny's room. The air was thick with the scent of baked bread and warm wood, and somewhere upstairs, Ron was still rummaging through his trunk for something he'd misplaced. I sat in the living room with a cup of cocoa Mrs. Weasley had left on the table for me. She always knew. Outside, the night was calm, the moonlight silvering the crooked edges of the house. "Harry," Hermione's voice called from the stairs. "Come on, Ron says he's found something." I followed her up to Ron's room, stepping carefully over creaky floorboards. The room was exactly as I remembered, cluttered, cozy, and covered in moving posters of Quidditch players. Scabber's old cage sat in the corner, now full of chocolate frog wrappers. Ron was standing near the window, holding an old wooden box with a proud grin. "Look what I found," he said. "Dad said it's from Grandpa Weasley's time. Some sort of muggle gadget he enchanted when he was younger." Inside the box were a few odd trinkets, rusty keys, old photos, and a tiny brass compass with a cracked glass face. "It's not a compass," she said. "Look, the needle isn't pointing north." Ron frowned. "So where's it pointing then?" The needle was spinning slowly, then stopped, not toward the window, not toward the door, but straight down through the floorboards. I raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual." Hermione smiled, her curiosity lighting up her face. "There's only one way to find out." We grabbed our wands, careful not to wake anyone, and followed the strange compass down the stairs. The house creaked quietly under our feet, but somehow the sound was soothing, like the burrow knew we were up to something harmless. The needle led us through the kitchen, past the enchanted dishes washing themselves in the sink, and straight toward the back door. When we stepped outside, the summer air wrapped around us, cool, earthy, filled with the hum of crickets. The garden glowed faintly with scattered fairy lights, and the distant sound of frogs drifted from the pond. The compass pulsed gently in Ron's hand, pointing toward the far end of the garden, where the old broom shed leaned slightly under a crooked tree. "Blimey," Ron whispered. "Don't tell me Dad's been hiding treasure in there." We opened the door slowly. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of broom polish. Broken handles, boxes of nails, and an old ghoul's shoe cluttered the shelves. Hermione lifted her wand. Lumos. The light glowed across the wooden walls, and then we saw it. Carved into the back of the shed was a small symbol, glowing faintly gold, the same as the one etched into the old compass. Hermione touched it gently. "It's responding to the compass. It's some sort of family charm." Ron leaned closer. "Mom never said anything about that." As soon as he spoke, the golden light expanded, filling the room with a soft shimmer. The air rippled, and before our eyes, a small hidden compartment slid open in the wall. Inside was an old journal wrapped in red ribbon. Ron lifted it carefully. This must have been Grandpa Weasley's. We sat together on the shed floor, the light from our wands flickering softly, and Hermione opened the first page. Inside were neat, looping letters, entries written decades ago, notes about enchanted muggle objects, sketches of tinkering projects, and small stories about each of the Weasley children when they were little. One page made Ron laugh quietly. Arthur accidentally charmed a toaster to sing lullabies. Molly insists we keep it, says the twins sleep better with it humming. We turned another page. Tonight, the burrow sang to me again. I think this house is alive in its own way. It listens, it remembers, it keeps us safe. Every light spell, every laugh, every cry, it takes it all in and hums it back when the night is quiet. We sat in silence for a moment, listening, and sure enough, the house was humming, faintly, softly, like a low song only the walls could carry. Hermione smiled. He's right. Magic like that doesn't just fade. Ron looked around the shed. Reckon the burrow really does look after us. We stayed there a while, reading quietly under the flickering wandlight until our eyelids grew heavy. The night air was cool and calm, and the forest in the distance shimmered faintly under the moonlight. Finally, we put the journal back, sealed the compartment, and watched the golden symbol fade into the wood. When we returned to the house, the kitchen clock's hands pointed to home. Every single one of them, even Percy's. Mrs. Weasley's charm, I thought, always making sure everyone comes back safe. We crept up the stairs, trying not to wake anyone, though the stair near the top creaked loudly enough to make Ron wince. Back in Ron's room, the compass had stopped spinning. It pointed calmly toward the window now, its needle steady and at rest. "Guess it found what it was looking for," Ron murmured. I smiled. So did we. When I finally lay down in the small camp bed beside Ron's, I could still hear the faint hum of the burrow, a song of old wood, warm light, and 1,000 memories. It wasn't just a house, it was a heart. And as I drifted into sleep, I thought of how lucky we were to have a home that listened, a family that cared, and a night filled with quiet magic. May your own night be as warm as the burrow's glow. May your dreams be filled with laughter and gentle spells. And may you always find your way home. There are few places in the world that feel more alive than the burrow at Christmas. It hums, truly hums, with the sound of laughter, sizzling pans, creaking staircases, and the rustle of wrapping paper enchanted to tie itself neatly into bows. From the moment you wake, the house seems to glow. Candles float along the ceiling beams. Snowflakes drift through open windows and vanish before they touch the floor. And Mrs. Weasley's voice carries through every room. Half a song, half a reminder about socks or scarves, or someone's forgotten jumper. It's impossible to be lonely at the burrow. That Christmas Eve, the air smelled of cinnamon and pine. Ron, Hermione, and I had spent the morning in the garden, helping Mr. Weasley hang enchanted fairy lights along the roof. They twinkled brighter every time Fred or George told a joke, which meant the roof had been blinking like a carnival for hours. Hermione had snow in her hair. Ron's scarf was on backward, and Hagrid had sent a crate of enchanted toffee that sang "We wish you a Merry Christmas" every time anyone opened it, to Mrs. Weasley's eternal dismay. By evening, the house was bursting with warmth. Charlie had arrived from Romania, his coat smelling faintly of dragon smoke. Bill and Fleur were laughing softly near the fireplace, their faces golden in the glow. Ginny was upstairs, wrapping something in secret, and Percy, though pretending to read by the window, kept sneaking glances at everyone, a small smile breaking his usual composure. When dinner came, it was like a feast straight from a dream. Candles hovered above the long wooden table. The plates filled themselves when empty. Steam rose from every dish. Golden potatoes, roasted carrots, and a ham that could have fed half of Hogwarts. Mrs. Weasley bustled about, glowing with pride, and Mr. Weasley leaned back, eyes twinkling behind his glasses, as he listened to Fred and George describe their latest prank invention. It wasn't grand like the Great Hall, or dazzling like Diagon Alley, but it was alive. Every inch of that little crooked house shimmered with love. After dinner, we sat before the fire. The room smelled of wood smoke and sweet pudding. Ginny strummed a few soft chords on her old guitar. Fleur hummed a carol from Beauxbatons, and even Crookshanks purred in rhythm with the crackle of the logs. When the clock struck 9, Mrs. Weasley clapped her hands. "All right, everyone, coats on, it's time!" Ron groaned. "Mom, it's freezing out there." But she only smiled. "All the best things happen under winter skies, dear." We bundled up and followed her outside. Snow had fallen thick across the garden, soft and glittering under the moonlight. The trees shimmered faintly, every branch draped with frost. In the middle of the field behind the burrow, a circle of candles floated gently above the snow. Mrs. Weasley waved her wand, and the flames rose higher, glowing gold and steady in the cold night air. "This," she said softly, "was a tradition my grandmother started. Every Christmas Eve, we light a circle for the ones we love, near and far, and we make a wish for the year ahead." One by one, we stepped into the circle. Hermione whispered her wish first, something about kindness and peace. Ron muttered something about the Chudley Cannons finally winning a game, which earned a laugh. Mr. Weasley wished for fewer exploding plugs and more working ones. Ginny wished for an adventure, and Fleur wished for a quiet year, which made everyone laugh again. When it was my turn, I hesitated. The snow fell softly, flakes catching in my hair, and the candles flickered like small stars. "I wish," I said quietly, "that the people I love always find their way home." Mrs. Weasley's eyes glistened in the candlelight. "That," she said gently, "is the best wish of all." We stood there for a long time, the night still around us. Above, the stars shimmered bright, and then, suddenly, a streak of silver light cut across the sky. "One!" Ginny shouted, pointing upward. Then another streak. Then another. Soon the sky was alive, hundreds of shooting stars crossing the heavens in slow, graceful arcs. Fred whispered, "Blimey, the stars are having a party." Hermione gasped softly, "It's the winter crossing. It only happens once every century. The stars shift in alignment. It's said to bring luck, protection, and new beginnings." We all stood in silence, watching the sky glitter and move. The snow reflected the light, the candles shimmered, and for a moment it felt like magic itself was holding its breath. Then, from the house, a warm glow burst through the windows. Mrs. Weasley's charm had lit the entire burrow like a lantern, soft gold spilling into the snow. When the stars finally faded, we went back inside. The fire roared higher, and mugs of cocoa waited on the table as if the house itself had known we'd need them. Mrs. Weasley tucked a blanket around my shoulders before I could protest. "You're one of ours, Harry," she said softly, "always." And I believed her. We sat by the fire, half asleep, listening to the clock tick softly on the mantel. Hermione and Ron dozed side by side. Ginny was curled in an armchair, Fang snoring near her feet. Mr. Weasley had nodded off mid-sentence, and Mrs. Weasley hummed quietly, her knitting needles working by themselves. The world outside was still and white. The burrow glowed like a heart in the dark. I looked around at the faces I loved, the family that had made room for me when I had nowhere else to go, and felt something deep and calm settle in my chest. Maybe this was what magic really was. Not spells or wands or ancient runes, but warmth, laughter, and love that refused to fade, even on the coldest nights. I finished my cocoa and leaned back in the chair. The last log in the fire cracked softly, sparks drifting up like tiny stars reborn. And as my eyes closed, I thought of the candles in the snow, the wish I'd made, and the stars that had answered. May the night always remember us kindly, I thought, and may the light of the burrow never go out. So, if you're listening now, wherever you are, may your night be soft and kind. May your heart be warm as the burrow's fire. And when you dream, may you find yourself walking under falling stars with laughter waiting just beyond the door. There's something about the forbidden forest at night that feels like stepping into a dream, quiet, endless, and filled with secrets that only whisper when the moon is high. I'd been there many times before, usually with Hagrid, sometimes by accident, and once or twice when I probably shouldn't have been. But that night was different. It started at Hagrid's hut. The air was cool and silver, the kind of night where the stars looked close enough to touch. Smoke drifted lazily from Hagrid's chimney, and the soft glow of his windows spilled across the grass. The forest loomed behind his hut, dark, patient, alive. Inside, the table was covered in maps, half-empty mugs of tea, and something that looked suspiciously like a dragon scale. Hagrid was pacing. His enormous boots thudded softly against the floorboards. "Glad you came," he said, as soon as Ron, Hermione, and I stepped through the door. "We might need a hand tonight, and I told the twins they could come too." Ron groaned. Oh, great. What could possibly go wrong? At that exact moment, the door burst open, and Fred and George stumbled in, both wearing matching scarves that glowed faintly in the dark. "Evening all," Fred said cheerfully. "Brought a few fireworks, just in case the forest gets dull." George added, "Also a compass that points toward trouble. It's been spinning wildly since we got here." Hermione sighed. "You two are unbelievable." Hagrid grinned beneath his beard. "They'll behave, won't you?" The twins nodded, though the sparkle in their eyes said otherwise. Then Hagrid turned serious. "We've heard a bit of stirring out there. Not dangerous, just strange. Heard something last night, deep in the trees. Like echoes, but not echoes of sound, echoes of light." We all exchanged glances. "Light?" Hermione asked softly. "Aye," Hagrid said. "Shimmering flashes, moving slow, like will-o'-the-wisps. I reckon the forest's up to something gentle, but I'd rather check. Thought you might fancy a walk." And just like that, we were off. The forest greeted us with stillness. Leaves shimmered with dew, and every step we took left a faint glow of moonlight on the moss. Fang padded along beside us, his ears twitching at the faint rustles in the distance. Fred whispered, "10 galleons says it's a colony of glowworms." George replied, 20 says it's something Hagrid's accidentally raised again." Hagrid chuckled. "Not this time. Whatever it is, it's old magic. I can feel it." As we moved deeper, the forest began to hum, faintly, like the air itself was singing. The trees shimmered with a soft silver glow. Hermione looked around, eyes wide. "It's the Lantern Grove," she whispered. "I've read about this. Every few decades, the forest opens a path to a hidden clearing, a place where lost lights gather." Sure enough, a faint trail of silver orbs floated between the trees, leading us onward like stars fallen to earth. We followed in silence. Even Fred and George had gone quiet now. The deeper we went, the brighter the glow became. The air grew warmer, and a faint sound, like bells made of light, drifted through the trees. Then we stepped into the clearing. It was breathtaking. Hundreds of glowing orbs floated above a pool of water, so still it looked like glass. The reflection doubled the light until it seemed we were standing in the middle of a star field. Hagrid's eyes shone. "Aye, that's what I heard. The Lantern of Echoes." "What is it?" Hermione asked. Hagrid lowered his voice. "Old forest magic. They say every creature that's ever loved this place leaves a bit of their light behind. And every so often, those bits gather again, calling to each other." The orbs pulsed slowly, like heartbeats. I could almost feel something, not dangerous, but gentle and sad, like memories drifting through time. Then Fang barked once softly. The orbs trembled, and from the other side of the clearing, a shape moved. For a heartbeat, my chest tightened, but then the shape stepped into the light, and I saw the familiar gleam of silver fur. Padfoot, Sirius. He walked into the clearing in his animagus form, fur glinting faintly in the glow. His eyes found mine, calm, wise, and full of mischief even now. Hermione gasped. "He's beautiful." Ron whispered, "He's not supposed to be here." Sirius gave a small, amused huff, his breath rising like smoke in the cold air. He padded closer, sat beside Hagrid, and looked into the pool. Hagrid smiled. I thought you might show up. Forest knows who belongs." We all stood together, the light from the orbs bathing us in silver. Fred and George were speechless for once. Hermione wiped a tear from her cheek. Sirius turned his head, eyes catching mine again. Then he lifted a paw and tapped the ground gently. The orbs began to move, swirling slowly above the pool, their light shifting into shapes. For a moment, they formed a stag, then an otter, then a wolf, glowing softly before fading again. Hermione whispered, "They're showing us memories." We stood and watched as the light danced, images of laughter, friendship, and love echoing through the air. The forest wasn't haunted, it was remembering. Sirius, still in his animagus form, looked peaceful. For the first time in a long while, he seemed at rest, as though he too had found a home in the quiet heart of the forest. Hagrid murmured, "See, Harry, forest don't just hold shadows. It holds every light that ever shone here. Don't forget that." The orbs began to drift upward, rising higher and higher, until they vanished among the trees. The pool stilled again. The glow faded softly, leaving only moonlight behind. Sirius turned once more to look at us, at me, then gave a soft, short bark that sounded almost like laughter. He trotted toward the trees, paused at the edge of the clearing, and vanished into the shadows. Hermione sighed. "He'll be all right." Ron nodded. "Reckon he will. Forest looks after its own." We made our way back slowly, the forest quiet, but full of that lingering, living light. Fred and George whispered softly, promising not to tell anyone what we'd seen. For once, they meant it. When we reached Hagrid's hut, he lit the fire and handed each of us a mug of cocoa. The warmth seeped through my hands, and the world outside the windows glowed faintly silver under the moon. Hagrid leaned back in his chair. "Sometimes the forest remembers more kindness than we think. It's not all danger and mystery. Sometimes it just wants to remind us we belong." We stayed a while longer, listening to the wind move through the trees, the gentle crackle of the fire, and the steady rhythm of Fang's snoring by the hearth. When I finally stepped outside to head back to the castle, the forest stood silent under the stars. Somewhere in the distance, a faint shimmer of light flickered through the trees, the last whisper of the Lantern of Echoes. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel afraid of the dark, because I knew now even the deepest forest can remember light. May your dreams tonight be quiet as moonlight on water. May you walk beneath stars that remember your laughter. And may you always find your way home, no matter how dark the forest seems. On tracks, blending with the gentle patter of rain. Outside, the night is dark and misty, but inside your carriage, golden lantern light glows warmly. You lean your head against the cool glass window, watching the blurred landscape slip past. The air is filled with excitement, whispers of spells, laughter of new friends, the rustling of robes as students shuffle in their seats. Somewhere, a chocolate frog leaps from its box, and a group of students giggle as they try to catch it. Hours seem to pass in a dream, until suddenly the train slows, then comes to a gentle stop. A hush falls across the carriages. The door opens with a creak, and a familiar voice calls out through the mist. "First years, this way! First years, follow me!" You step off the train and into the crisp night air. The rain has eased to a soft drizzle, cool against your skin. A vast black lake stretches before you, its surface shimmering under the moonlight. And there, high above on the cliffs, rises Hogwarts Castle. Its towers pierce the clouds, windows glowing warmly like hundreds of watchful eyes. The sight steals your breath away. The castle feels ancient and alive, as though it has been waiting for you all along. In the boats now, 4 to a boat. You climb into a small wooden boat with 3 others. The water is smooth, and the boats glide silently, as though pushed by invisible hands. Owls circle high above, their wings whispering through the mist. The closer you drift toward the castle, the larger and more magnificent it becomes. Its stone walls seem carved by giants, its turrets reaching for the stars. Finally, you pass under a great archway and step onto solid ground once more. You are led up a grand staircase and into the castle itself. Inside, the warmth wraps around you instantly. Torches flicker against ancient stone, portraits whisper from their frames, and the faint smell of polished wood and candle wax fills the air. Soon, you find yourself standing in the great hall. The ceiling above is enchanted, reflecting the night sky, dark clouds swirling, dotted with stars. 4 long tables stretch before you, each alive with chatter, while a golden staff table gleams at the far end. But before you can sit, there is one more step: the sorting hat. One by one, names are called, and each new student walks to the front, placing the ancient weathered hat upon their head. The hall grows silent each time, waiting for the sorting hat to announce its decision. Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, Slytherin. Cheers erupt from each table as students find their new homes. At last, your name is called. You step forward, your heart pounding, your palms damp. The sorting hat rests on your head, and suddenly a voice whispers in your ear, curious, thoughtful, as though it can read every secret you've ever held. "Ah, another young wizard. Yes, I see courage. Yes, cleverness too. Oh, such a thirst to prove yourself, and a kindness that glows bright. But where shall I place you?" You take a slow breath. Whatever house the hat chooses, it feels as though destiny itself is unfolding. After a moment, the sorting hat announces your house, and cheers explode from one of the 4 tables. You are no longer just a visitor. You belong. Later that night, guided by your prefect, you step into your common room. The crackle of a fire greets you, warm and welcoming. Soft chairs and old books surround you, and the sound of rain tapping against the tall windows is steady and soothing. Your bed awaits upstairs, draped in heavy blankets. As you climb under the covers, safe within the walls of Hogwarts, you feel your eyelids grow heavy. The journey has ended, and yet, in truth, it has only just begun.